Hey ladies, are you feeling overwhelmed by hormonal changes? Well, you're definitely not alone. There are more than 1,000 hormone disruptors living in our environment right now. It's in your food, your water, the air you breathe, the clothes you wear, your skincare products. They all mess with your hormones. Then there's the natural hormone changes your body goes through, premenopause, menopause. And while it's a natural process, it doesn't mean you have to suffer through it. The good news is you don't have to suffer through it anymore because now you have Hormone Harmony, a formula made only with herbal ingredients that are shown to reduce hormonal symptoms in women of all ages. Hormone Harmony is not just a hormone supporting supplement, it's become a phenomenon. Women can't stop talking about it on social media. A bottle of Hormone Harmony is sold every 24 seconds. And the biggest benefit? Well, my wife says it makes her feel like her own self again. And that's what women mention over and over in the reviews. And there are over 30,000 reviews for Hormone Harmony. And for a limited time, you can get 15% off your entire first order at happymammoth.com. Just use code RLRC at checkout. That's happymammoth.com and use code RLRC for 15% off today. That's happymammoth.com and use code RLRC.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Real Life Real Crime Daily. I'm Jim Chapman.
I'm Woody Overton.
And I'm Mike Agovino. We promised y'all that we would continue a series that we are calling the Crimes of the Century. Our first crime that we featured was the JonBenet Ramsey story. And today we are going to talk about Son of Sam.
Yes.
Huge case back in the day.
Back in Mike's day.
Back in the day. But, Mike just realized that he's 12 years older than Jim and 7 years older than Woody.
Yeah.
Yes, back in the day and back in Mike's day. And so the crimes of Son of Sam were committed over a 13-month period from late June of 1976 through early July of 1977. But there was really a 7-month period of absolute fear, starting in January of 77 to July of 77, which we will get into as we get into this story. But just to give you a little bit of the backdrop, the 1970s in New York City were not good. The country was coming off of a devastating recession. You remember all the challenges in the gas and oil business and the lines around the block for gas stations, and crime in New York City was at that point the highest levels of all time. Each of those years, 76 and 77, there were over 2,000 murders each year in New York City. And so crime was out of control. The city was not a safe place. About the only thing that was going well in New York at the time were the Yankees. It was sort of the Renaissance, the beginning of the Renaissance of the New York Yankees.
Go Reggie Jackson and Ron Guidry.
Exactly. That hadn't been good since the days of Mickey Mantle. Had roughly gone a decade and a half of being irrelevant, and in 76, on the backs of, Thurman Munson and Reggie Jackson, Ron Guidry, Louisiana boy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And others, the Yankees found their way into the playoffs and eventually a World Series. But the media is a huge part of the story of Son of Sam, and we will go back to this theme time and time again as we go through the story. But as somebody who spends a lot of time studying the media, I have another podcast called The Death of Journalism, where we specifically look at what has happened to the media and the reasons why truth is no longer the primary driver of journalism in this day and age, if you will.
Catalyst.
It's really ratings. But back in 1970s, specifically 76, 77, New York City, this is really before even cable, so no internet.
Hey, 77 is when Star Wars came out there.
The Millennium Falcon.
No internet, no cable television. There were really 2 radio stations in New York that pretty much controlled the market. WABC, 77 WABC, and 66 WNBC were the 2 big stations. You had CBS Channel 2, NBC Channel 4, ABC Channel 7, and a couple of indies, Channel 9 and Channel 11. And you had the papers, which were the New York Times and then the tabloids, the Daily News and the New York Post. And the media is a huge part of this story because in 1976, a relative unknown by the name of Rupert Murdoch bought the New York Post for $30 million. The Post had been a perennial loser. The Daily News was the dominant tabloid. Murdoch came in after taking over his father's business in Australia, moving to the United Kingdom and having a lot of success in the tabloid business in the UK, and came to New York with the intent of making the Post the number 1 tabloid in America. And that becomes a big, big story, as I said, throughout this. So let's go back in time now with Jim taking us through the beginning, the genesis.
Yes. And actually, one other thing that we failed to mention was going on during that time. The mafia was huge in New York City. Yep. That was the time in the mafia. There was a shooting that occurred in the Pelham Bay area of the Bronx. 2 women, Jody Valenti and Donna Loria, 18, were sitting in Valenti's double-parked Oldsmobile when a man approached the car and he fires 3 shots from a gun. Loria was killed instantly, and Valenti was shot in the thigh before the man walked quickly away. Now, Valenti described her attacker as a white male in his 30s, approximately 5'8" and about 200 pounds. He was short and had dark, curly hair.
Listen, y'all, this is New York City, and that would tally like 2,000 murders that year. So this was just one of the murders that would have occurred on.
Well, on October 23rd of 1976, it happened again. 2 more people were shot, but they both survived. Carl Denaro, 20, and Rosemary Keenan, 18, were shot while sitting in a parked car in a residential area of Flushing, Queens. Now, both survived, as I said, but Denaro was struck in the head by one of the bullets.
But from a law enforcement standpoint, this is nearly 3 months later, and neither one of the victims were killed, so they didn't tie it into anything else. And it really didn't receive special attention.
Well, on November 24th, 1976, a couple is attacked by a man in military fatigues. Donna Damasi, who was 16, and Joanne Lamino, who is 18, were headed to Lamino's home in Floral Park, Queens, when they were approached on the street by a man, again dressed in military fatigues, who produced a revolver and shot each of the women once. The attacker fired several more shots before he took off running. Though she was shot in the neck, Damasi survived without permanent injury. However, Lamino was shot in the back and was paralyzed for life.
But the Damasi and Lamino attacks came a month after the Flushing attacks, and they just appeared random, and both victims survived. So it's not even a murder. They're not even looking at a murder at this point, and no one thought these things were connected.
Well, on January 30th, 1977, there was yet another attack with seemingly no motive. Christine Freund, 26, and her fiancé, John Deal, 30, were shot as they sat in Deal's car in Flushing, Queens. Panicked, Deal sped away. He suffered minor injuries, but Freund was shot twice and later died in the hospital. Now, following this murder, the police made their first public acknowledgement that the attack bore similarities to earlier incidents. All the victims were struck with a .44 caliber bullet, and the assailant appeared to be attacking young women with long, dark hair. So once police connected the prior incidents to the Freund murder, the tabloid coverage began. multiple stories every day in both the Post and the Daily News, as Mike has spoke about, and the city began to panic. Now, Woody, let me ask you something. Wouldn't they have been able to match slugs to a single weapon in 1977?
They could have if they had known. Several factors on this. First of all, you have to be suspected that the slugs were related to each crime. Okay. Secondly, the slugs would have had to been in good enough condition to get the striations off of it underneath the microscope. And y'all, each pistol or each weapon, rifle, not shotguns, but when the projectile is fired out of the weapon, it spins and it leaves certain grooves on the bullet. That's how they can identify it. Nowadays, they have a database, a national database, where you can pick up a slug from anywhere and put it in, and it can hit an instant match. Back then, not so much. I mean, they would have been way ahead of the game to figure out they needed to match these slugs.
Yeah, it's important to remember the time frame and the fact that, we say it a lot. Back then, police officers just had to be more skilled. They didn't have the technology they have now. So a little over a month later, after that incident, on March 8th, 1977, a college student is attacked in the same area, Flushing, Queens. Virginia Voskerichian, 19, was shot in the head and died instantly. It was revealed at a press conference 2 days later after Voskerichian's murder that police strongly suspected the same .44 caliber Bulldog revolver that had been used in all the other attacks. It was on, y'all. We got a serial killer on our hands.
So now, after all these incidents, and they figuring that a certain type of female is being targeted, I better go even further back to matching slugs. But a .44 Bulldog revolver was not a common weapon. That's a more expensive weapon. 22 pistols killed more people than any gun in the history of the world. .44 Bulldog revolver, I've owned almost every gun there is. I've never owned one. So they're tying that together. They're tying the locations. They're tying the profile of the female victims, and boom, they figure out we have a serial killer. And again, a serial killer, for those of you who don't know, is a person who kills basically two or more people in separate incidents that don't appear to be related in any other way.
So, as you would imagine, the tabloid newspapers jump all over it. And they're battling for the latest information, and the sales of papers, they're flying off the shelves. You got to remember the time, y'all. They have people on, the street corners, like you'd imagine. Get, serial killer on the loose, buy the paper, all those sorts of things. It had absolutely everything going for it as a tabloid perfect storm. Sam Roberts, who was the editor of the Daily News in 1977, told the New York Times of the media frenzy. And he was quoted as saying it was an ongoing, unfolding crime story that New Yorkers were genuinely terrified about.
They should have been.
Well, we were. Speaking as one of those New Yorkers at the time. And at the time I was 15 years old. Yes, it was my sophomore year. I always think about this as the summer between my freshman and sophomore year, because it really reached its apex right as school ended that year. But there are a couple of things I think about when I think about this story. I immediately see the sketches. The police sketches of the killer were a part of every bit of the communication by the newspapers, by the TV stations. They're in the background of behind an anchor. As the anchor is talking, they're on the front page every single day of the tabloids, and it was all about stoking fear in New Yorkers. And I had a girlfriend at the time. I mean, if you look at the victims are older. The victims were, I think the youngest was 18, Gloria. The the first victim. So they were 18 into their 20s, and they all occurred in the boroughs of New York City. So mostly in Queens. And so being 15 and being in the suburbs of Long Island, 20 miles from the closest of any of the murders, rationally, there shouldn't have been that much fear, but it was crazy. It was paralyzing. I had a girlfriend who had long dark hair, and people who had dark hair at the time were either cutting their long hair short, were dyeing their hair blonde, were wearing it up in a bun, or wearing a hat, or something else to hide that look, believing that this was the type that at that time the .44 caliber killer was targeting. And it's probably not that hard for people who live in lockdown states to imagine what this was like, because it was very much like living in a lockdown state during COVID. The streets were empty at night. Nobody was going out to dinner. Nobody was going to the movie theater. Nobody was doing anything at night. And the tabloids were they were in the fear business. The daily headlines were purposely designed to frighten the hell out of you, especially
Nothing sells like murder.
Especially women. And so, when you put in perspective that there were 2,000 murders that year in New York, and this guy only murdered 6 people, shot 13, murdered 6. It's a very small percentage of the overall murders, but it was the only story being told every single day by these 2 newspapers in a war. And eventually, as things move forward, the killer becomes unbelievably brazen and actually involves a specific reporter in the story.
Right. And, I want to just circle back, y'all. And this is why I brought up the mafia at the beginning. So Mike had mentioned he was from the suburbs of Long Island area, and that was a Sammy the Bull territory. That was me and Woody both had this huge fascination for the mob. Right. And look, they didn't like it, I'm sure, any more than anybody else, that someone was impeding on their territory and killing women. And who is it? I'm sure they wanted to catch him worse than the cops did. Yeah. Especially because he's messing with the women in that area. And so just that's why I brought that up at the beginning. Now, April 17th of 1977, the killer announces his identity for the first time. In the early morning hours, Valentina Suriani, 18, and her boyfriend Alexander Isso, 20, were sitting in Suriani's car near her home in the Bronx when they were each shot twice. Isso died at the scene, and Suriani later in the hospital. Now, at the scene of the April murders, investigators found a letter from the killer addressed to the NYPD captain, Joseph Borelli. In it, the killer referred to himself as the son of Sam.
That I would dare say was the birth of nicknames for serial killers.
And suggested he was following orders from his father and promised the killings would continue. Naturally, the Daily News, y'all, they get that tip, and they ran it as a front page story.
Murder. Nothing sounds like murder.
For whatever reason, the .44 caliber killer thing didn't scare like the son of Sam nickname.
It's not as catchy as the son of Sam, right? Son of Sam. It sounds like the son of the devil to me.
I'm the son of Sam.
Well,
son of Sam.
Again, it was the coverage, the way that they did it, all the imaging around Son of Sam. And
so on May 30th, 1977, iconic Daily News columnist Jimmy Breslin received a handwritten letter from someone claiming to be the son of Sam. Within the extremely creepy letter, the writer mentions the first victim, Donna Loria, warning Breslin, do not forget Donna Loria. And you cannot let the people forget her either. She was a very, very sweet girl. But Sam is a thirsty lad, and he won't let me stop killing until he gets his fill of blood. And the letter was signed, the son of Sam. The Daily News published a redacted version of the letter in what will become one of the paper's biggest selling issues ever. Woody said it best, murder sells. Yep. Jimmy Breslin had written more about this story than anyone, and now
you know what?
He was in it.
You know what? Let me tell y'all something. On a case like this, the media can fuck it up for the cops so bad. All right. Now they knew the weapon was a .44 Bulldog. They knew who was not stereotyping, who was choosing out as his victims. Yes, there's letters, and I think you have to maybe publish a certain part. When you do that, you're opening Pandora's box, because you're going to get every freaking nut job in the world. They're going to call in thousands and thousands of tips. And what happens? Each one of them has to be run down. And it just kills the cops' time. That's probably a bad word. It takes up the cops' time when they could be focusing on the son of Sam.
So June 26, 1977, a couple gets attacked outside of a club after leaving a disco in Bayside, Queens. Judy Placido, 17, and Sal Lupo, 20, were shot while sitting in Lupo's parked car. Now, both of those survived the injuries.
Yeah, so June 26th was just 3 days before what would be the first anniversary of the first shooting. Keeping in mind that when Son of Sam first shot those people in Pelham, no one had any idea it was him. And so it wasn't until January that police connected all of the earlier shootings to the .44 caliber killer / Son of Sam. But now the media was making an enormous deal about the 1 year anniversary, that he was going to strike that night. And we're just out of school. So back then in New York, school ended about June 20th, somewhere right around then. It's your first week of summer. Everybody wants to go out. Everybody wants to hang out, and you're paralyzed. In fact, the entire economy was paralyzed. I mean, it wasn't like, again, going through COVID lockdowns and the government cutting trillions of dollars, putting trillions of dollars back into the economy. This was following the recession of the 70s. It's the Jimmy Carter White House. It is a rough period of time. Crime beyond the Son of Sam was terrible, and now the New York economy is really, really being hit. There's a blackout that occurs, and if you look out the blackout of 1977 in New York, you will see unprecedented looting. I'm not talking about the kind of stuff we saw in Hollywood, California, in the wake of the George Floyd situation. It was everywhere, every store being broken into. It was just complete anarchy. It was lawlessness around New York. And so in the backdrop of those kind of things from an economic standpoint, and you're a high school freshman looking at your sophomore year like I was, you've got a girlfriend with brown hair, and you want to be out and you want to be partying and you want to be with friends and you want to go to the movies and everything else, and you can't go anywhere because everyone is completely paralyzed with fear that on the anniversary he is going to strike again, and no one knows where he's going to strike.
Yeah, so everybody's just kind of waiting, on the edge of their seat in fear. And in July 31st, 1977, he strikes again. Now, up until this point, they had developed a profile of sorts. And, the dark hair, long dark hair was something, if you had long dark hair, you were probably dying it by that point. But Son of Sam did something for the first time, and he attacked a victim with blonde hair. Now, Robert Violante, 20, and Stacy Moskowitz, 19, were shot in Volante's car. Violante would lose his left eye. Moskowitz would die 18 hours after the attack. This was the first time Son of Sam had ventured into the borough of Brooklyn, and the first involving the victim, Moskowitz, with blonde hair.
Yeah. I remember that really well because I remember the coverage about him branching out into Brooklyn. I also remember that Moskowitz's mother, Moskowitz lived for a period of time, and they brought her to the hospital, and her family arrived at the hospital. And I remember her mother on camera grieving, and her mother with her dyed red hair became omnipresent in this story.
Hey, y'all, let me tell you about Gobble. All Gobble meal kits are pre-prepped. That means less work for you and less waste in your kitchen. Their meal kits include everything you need so you can save time at the store or just skip that trip entirely. I got the box in and I had 3 different meals. I had a Kung Pao chicken, crispy fish tacos, and a beef bourguignon, however you say it. But let me tell you about the classic beef bourguignon. Look, it came with beef pot roast and a beef broth concentrate, red wine demi-glace, cremini mushrooms, cipollone onions, mashed potatoes, baby carrots, and rosemary thyme butter. It was so easy to make. Literally like 15 minutes it took Cindy. And let me tell you something, and all the dishes were fire, but this thing was like a taste explosion in my mouth. It's just unreal. We've got to spend more time together and more time doing the things we love because everything came in this one single box right to my door. So see what a difference Gobble will make for your household. Right now, they're offering my listeners a fantastic limited time deal. You get $120 off across 4 boxes plus free shipping and free cookies. And let me tell you, those cookies, I ate one that was sin-baked and it was delicious. Go to gobble.com/reallife. That's GOBBLE.com/real-life for $120 off your first 4 boxes. This offer is not available on the home site, so don't miss out. This is genius. It's taste explosions in your mouth like you never had. Spark something uncommon this holiday with just the right gift from Uncommon Goods. The busy holiday season is here, and Uncommon Goods makes it less stressful with incredible hand-picked gifts for everyone on your list, all in one spot. Gifts to spark joy, wonder, delight, and that's exactly what I wanted feeling. Hey, y'all, I ordered a super cool piece. It's a candle with a sculpture of LSU's Tiger Stadium on top of it. And each officially licensed laser cut wooden replica features up to 4 layers of detail, creating a bird's eye view of a specific football field, seating section, and more. And every label includes your stadium's name, the team's logo, and school location. And it has a coconut, soy, vegan wax infused with sandalwood smell that creates tailgates and touchdown scent profile, reminiscent of game day. It's invigorating like fresh cut grass and nostalgic like smoke from a pre-game grill, and calming like the crisp autumn air of a new semester on campus. Y'all, I love it. I have it at the base of my TV, and I'm ready to watch the Tigers play on Saturday night, right? Uncommon Goods. Look, when you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. And many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches. So shop now before they sell out this holiday season. Uncommon Goods looks for products that are high quality, unique, and often handmade or made in the U.S. They have the most meaningful, out of the ordinary gifts anywhere. They even have gifts you can personalize. From holiday hosts and hostess gift to the coolest finds for kids to hits for everyone from the book lovers to diehard sports fans. Uncommon Goods has something for everyone, not the same old selections you can just find anywhere. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give $1 to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They've donated more than $3 million to date. So to get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/RLRC. That's uncommongoods.com/RLRC for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods, we're all out of the ordinary.
All the way through the years, like every year she was back on camera talking about things. And this particular shooting is one that years later, the actual son of Sam, whose identity we'll reveal in a few minutes, claimed not to have been the person who pulled the trigger. It's a really interesting twist that we'll get into. But I remember the police sketches of the killer. At this point, it was really confusing because the sketches evolved and each one looked less and less like the one prior to it, which for whatever reason just made you more scared. I think they evolved in such a way that they were scarier as they moved along. I haven't mentioned this up until now, but I have two older sisters. So I was 15 at the time, but I had a sister who was 17 at the time and a sister who was 18 at the time. And so they both with brown hair. And so they were, they were in the target range. And I remember just them being paralyzed. Like you couldn't even have a conversation about it. And, Friday nights, Saturday nights, it was just everybody staying home, playing board games, doing anything to take our minds off of what was going on. We talked before about the 1 year anniversary and then went right to the July 31st Moskowitz murder. But that period around the anniversary and until the end of July, the MERS, that was the scariest month.
Yeah, let me tell you something.
Such a scary month.
I wouldn't call it fear or scary. I would actually say it was a reign of terror. This cat's raining down on New York City and the surrounding areas.
What was the pressure like on the police at that time, Mike? I mean, you've got a guy. At some point, people got to start saying, "Why can't they catch this guy?" And were the police feeling enormous pressure just from a uproar standpoint?
Yeah, and I would equate it to what we saw go on with the Idaho murders, where the police were actually, in the Idaho murders, I think we later found out they were actually onto someone, and had been on them for some time, but in their public appearances didn't offer much by way of comfort to the public that they were getting close to anyone. In this particular case, we know now that they were absolutely nowhere at this point in time, and that things turn rather dramatically and amazingly. But the police, and it was Borelli who was referenced earlier, who was the lead and the face on television. And I would say Borelli and the New York City mayor at the time, Abe Beame, were the two people who were most in the spotlight, most getting criticism. And the devastating effects to an already weakened New York economy were just being exacerbated in a really big way. And so the public was not getting any kind of feeling like the police were making progress here. And that just stoked the fear further.
And I'm going to call it a reign of terror, y'all. This guy's bringing down on New York City, not just fear. But I always say there's no such thing as a perfect crime. And generally, the further these serial killers go along, they're going to make a mistake. And that's what happened in this case. A few days after Moskowitz's murder, an eyewitness came forward claiming to have seen a man with what looked like a gun minutes before the Brooklyn shootings. The eyewitness just happened to mention that police officers were on the block writing parking tickets around the same time. So a search revealed one of the ticketed cars that night belonged to David Berkowitz of Yonkers, New York. Yonkers is in Westchester County, but it's the first town immediately north of the Bronx. And it wouldn't have been out of the ordinary for someone from Westchester to be in Brooklyn visiting, but hey, it was a lead, and it was a good lead. So a call to Yonkers police revealed that they were familiar with Berkowitz because he was being investigated over complaints that he killed a neighbor's dog. And on August 10th, 1977, the police go to stake out Berkowitz's apartment building in Yonkers. His car is parked outside, and cop sees the butt of a rifle sticking out of his car from under the back seat. And without a warrant, he enters the vehicle, and the police find the rifle, maps of the crime scenes, ammunition, and an unmailed letter in the glove box addressed to Jimmy Breslin, Daily News. So the cops wait for Berkowitz to leave the apartment building and get in his car. And once he does, they surround the vehicle, and one of them calls out, "David Berkowitz?" And Berkowitz says, "Nope. I'm the son of Sam. You got me." And a bag containing the .44 caliber revolver was recovered next to him. The following day, Berkowitz confessed to the shooting, y'all, and he told the cops that he received his instructions to kill from his neighbor, Sam Carr, who communicated through his demonic dog, Harvey, and who himself was inhabited by the devil. Thinking that this may have been just a ruse to make himself look insane, the state did what they did, and ultimately they said Berkowitz was mentally fit to stand trial.
Yeah, basically they heard his story of saying the dog was telling him to do this, and they're like, nobody can be that crazy. You're just trying to act crazy. Right. You're really not, because nobody's going to listen to their dog, right? Well, May 8th, 1978, Berkowitz withdrew that insanity defense, and he pled guilty to 6 murders. Look, if you go back, the second they asked him, "Are you Berkowitz?" he basically looks at him and says, "I'm the son of Sam." Right. He gave it up. At that point, he couldn't believe he had got away with it as long as he did, but he was proud of it, and now it's all about the notoriety that's going to come with it. So he withdraws that insanity defense, pleads guilty to the 6 murders, and was given six 25-year to life sentences for the crimes, which, of course, he's been denied parole ever since.
I can close my eyes and look and see it now. And if you go do searches, I'm sure you'll find this. Berkowitz had a smirk. He had a smile on his face, sitting in the back of a police car, being brought to wherever jail they were bringing him to the first time. But I remember how chilling it was to see that this guy was laughing. He was smiling. He was so proud of what he had done. And probably a lot of cases these days, serial killers, there are certain news outlets that will refuse to use their name publicly.
Well, they don't want to give that, make more copycats, especially with these mass school shootings and stuff. They say it once, and then after that, they say the shooter.
The Post and the Daily News turned this guy into a star.
Yeah, a legend, an urban legend.
And you could just feel, just in a really, really creepy way, how this guy, and it's, and you can see it in the letters he sent to Breslin, the letter he sent to Borelli. Again, you can search those online and you will see it. But he had this just really, really eerie smile on his face, and that continued through all the different times you were able to see him, and they were at arraignment and other things. And so when I started looking back at this case as we started our Crimes of the Century series, I was drawn to cult, satanic cult, this whole idea that Berkowitz didn't act alone, that he was part of a larger group, even that there were ties to Charles Manson and to others. And there was an investigative journalist by the name of Maury Terry who dedicated really the rest of his life to continuing to investigate the Son of Sam case, because he believed there were broader ties to a satanic cult known as the Process Church of the Final Judgment. And so in the month following his arrest, Berkowitz wrote a letter to Sam Carr, who again was his neighbor.
And he was in jail when he wrote this.
Yes. Where he referred to his neighbor Sam Carr as, quote, Sam, my Lord, and, quote, Papa God. In the letter, Berkowitz threatened to expose Carr as the true force behind the Son of Sam killings and a spate of other killings. Years later, Berkowitz would say from prison that he was acting in concert with a group of devil worshippers that were led by Carr and his two sons.
I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Bless you. The investigative journalist Maury Terry and Berkowitz would become, I don't know. I mean, they were associated. I would even say friends. Berkowitz would write letters to Terry and would give him clues. I can recall Terry showing the connection between Berkowitz and the Carrs. There was a path that ran behind Berkowitz's apartment building that ran right to the Carrs' house and continued further into a park in Yonkers, and that inside of an old area of that park, there were demonic worship signs. There was an area where they found the bones of a number of German shepherds that a group had been regularly killing German shepherds in that particular case.
This is according to Berkowitz, correct?
Well, this is according to Terry, Maury Terry.
Who got the information from
investigative
Berkowitz?
Well, yeah. He got information from Berkowitz, but then he went to the park. Undermeyer Park is what I believe the name of the park is. And so Berkowitz claimed on video that he had not been the shooter for several of the crimes. I mentioned the Moskowitz murder in Brooklyn, but others as well, and that he was convicted for all of them, but that he also said that he was never alone for any of them. And he indicated first the involvement of both of Sam Carr's sons.
I wonder what Harvey had to say about that.
Harvey was dead by that point. Harvey's the dog, folks. Look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I find Terry's work pretty interesting here. The Carr family members, the two sons, both died under suspicious circumstances shortly after Berkowitz's arrest. The first was John Carr, who was the oldest son. He was shot dead in Minot, North Dakota in February of 1978, so about 6 months after Berkowitz's arrest. The death was originally ruled suicide, but an investigation was reopened, and it was later declared a murder. And Terry Gardner, the sheriff of Ward County, North Dakota, where Minot is, told the New York Times that he, quote, had no doubt that the murder in Minot was tied to the Son of Sam case. So, look, you can search this stuff and go down many a rabbit hole here, but there's a lot there.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did they have any more Son of Sam murders with a 44 Bulldog or anything after Berkowitz is locked up?
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you.
But the two
Case closed.
But the Carr brothers, and again, remember,
and Harvey,
son of Sam. Who were the sons of Sam? The sons of
Carr
Sam
brothers.
were the Carr brothers.
And
right?
Harvey's dead too.
Harvey's definitely dead.
But wait. Okay. I want to know how Harvey fucking died.
So Michael Carr, who was the younger one, who was 27 years old at the time, died in a very suspicious one-car accident on the West Side Highway in Manhattan. So Maury Terry's work, for those of you who are interested, is captured in a Netflix series. A Descent into Darkness is what it's called, as well as a book he wrote entitled The Ultimate Evil.
Pretty interesting. I saw one and read the other, but they didn't tell me how Harvey died.
So we're making jokes about Maury Terry, but there are a lot of people who respect this guy's work. I'm not telling you that I'm a believer, but it's worth spending the time and watching the Netflix special. I don't know that you want to read the book, but
I would also throw in there that in the people that lived never mentioned more than one person. They never saw more than one person. And
my personal
there were eyewitnesses that lived, and they described Berkowitz to a T.
And the New York Times saying that the sheriff and deputy sheriff, not the sheriff in Ward County, saying he had no doubt it's tied into it. I mean, who the fuck knows where this Barney Fife came from? After Son of Sam or Berkowitz gets locked up, there's no more that fit this profile. Case is closed. In my opinion, I get all this, but I read the book and I saw the movie. Son of Sam.
Certainly, they could have been instructing him or knew about it. I don't know about being involved in the murder.
You know what? We absolutely need to cover the West Memphis 3 one day, okay? Because it's all the same bullshit afterwards about satanic and all that shit, and it's all proven false. Every case I've ever heard of that they said is satanic and the rituals and all this bullshit has always been bullshit. Son of Sam killed him. David Berkowitz. I'm not. I appreciate your point. I'm just giving you my heart.
Yeah, and I'm not disagreeing with you.
Right.
I'm just saying there's someone out there
right. It's
who
interesting.
dedicated his life
Barney.
to suggesting there's this was part of something larger.
Absolutely, and props to him for believing what he believed in.
To me, I put a pin in this case, and it's to have lived it as a teenager and then to look back on it now. I certainly didn't identify it this way at the time, but it is it's a landmark in terms of what is now the norm in 2023, which is the stoking of panic, that the media is rewarded for. It is they are businesses that are driven by subscriptions and by advertising, and the more people that are buying that paper and reading those stories, obviously, the more revenue they are generating. And this case proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that you could build a narrative around the story of 6 murders occurring over a 13-month period in a city where there were over 2,000 murders during that same time, and literally shut an economy down. Period. Scare the hell out of every female age 16 to 30 in the area, and it became what put Rupert Murdoch on the and let's not forget where Rupert Murdoch is today with News Corporation and owning Fox and the Post obviously still, and a lot of it was the media's active role in stoking fear was
it didn't shut down.
here.
It didn't shut down all the economy, because I guarantee you couldn't get a firearm or a guard dog or whatever. I'm telling you from experience, and it goes back to the media.
German Shepherds at the time.
No, Derek Todd Lee happened. Derek Todd Lee happened. I went to Baton Rouge Police Supply to buy a revolver, a small revolver for my mother. Couldn't get one. And he said it was 6 months on back order. You couldn't get a can of mace. You couldn't get anything, but the media was fueling the fire. And they actually had it wrong. Of course, the profile and everything else. But so I get that, and shutting it down back then, holy shit, could you imagine if they had the media cover they have now? The social media and everything else.
Well, he would have never gotten away with
That
it.
caught him a lot sooner.
Nowadays, he wouldn't even got the recognition that he got back then, right? This is like one of the landmark cases for serial killers and getting away with it. And then, it's nothing, the murder and the sensationalizing and shit and bringing in the devil worship and all that and the suspicious death of family members, that all sells. And you're dead on, spot on. It's a media play. They played it way longer than they should have by going to fucking Ward County, North Dakota, and interviewing a deputy sheriff. That's just to sell more papers.
Well,
I don't think that was Terry himself. I don't think that was the.
Well, I'm sure
the Daily News or the Post were involved.
I'm sure it got covered. All right.
They certainly sensationalize everything, and it had to be covered. Look, if they're not shining a magnifying glass on this, and all 13 related killings were happening, the first thing people would say was, "Why the hell didn't the paper tell us the 13?" So, but it's the sensationalizing of it, and that is what you brought up with the Son of Sam. That is intended to strike fear. The Night Stalker. You pick a serial killer. They all have these scary nicknames.
The Son of Sam grew.
Well, he gave himself that name.
Yeah, but he grew. I mean, he didn't give himself a name in the beginning.
And they will refer.
He did killings.
They
he
will
got
refer
off on
to
it.
him as that.
Then he escaped, and so now he's going to grow, and he starts leaving letters, and he just grew until he got busted.
It's why Sean.
Hey, asshole, learn how to park.
Right. It's why Sean Vincent Gillis never, he's one of the worst serial killers of all time, but Derek Todd Lee, who was running around at the same time, got all the media attention.
That's right.
And it was why he was referred to as the other Louisiana serial killer.
Right.
That was his, he should have had a lot worse name than that, right? But because Derek Todd Lee, DTL, was running around, he was referred to as the other serial killer. Not quite as scary.
I think Berkowitz certainly is a special monster, and he deserves to be in the crimes of the century, because I actually think he gave way to probably even, we said profile earlier. There were no official FBI profiles at that time. I bet you him and Ted Bundy and certain ones like that, I know they were the catalyst for the FBI developing profiles and everything else. So he definitely deserves mention. Or deserves a story. And you know what? But I'm making light of some shit like joking about Harry and stuff, but these real people, they got murdered.
That's right.
Right.
And he's going straight to hell.
Yep.
Where he deserves to be.
Hell or jail. Mike, is he still alive?
Berkowitz, yeah.
Is he in Rikers or where?
No, he's moved around. He was in Attica
Attica,
for a
that's what I meant.
period,
That's what I
but
meant,
I don't think he's in Attica now.
Yeah, he's
I'm not
probably
sure where
in
he is
fucking
now.
geriatric unit somewhere.
Talking
I mean,
to
because he was
dogs.
older than you. Well, you and I are only like 5 years apart.
Wow.
I didn't mean it like that because we're close in age. Actually, you look really good for someone that's 5 years older than me, or 6 years older than me.
Thanks, Woody. I was 7 years older than you.
But who's counting?
Let's put a wrap on it, Jim.
Hey, thank you. I want to thank you for researching this and
Yeah, you did a great
up
job.
and being able to put your own perspective from having lived in that time, even talking about your sister.
Personal experience.
I think it is very interesting. Certainly worthy of being one of the crimes of the century.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mike.
And we will see y'all again on Wednesday. And until next time, on Real Life, Real Crime Daily, I'm Jim Chapman.
I'm Woody Overton.
And I'm Mike Agovino.
We'll see you Wednesday. Peace.
A business.